Hi, folks. So first and foremost, because it is so warm, and here you go, you have the billowing backdrop. I am a diehard and I don't learn. If I find that the billowing backdrop starts to expose this messy room, I will close the window. And that's all I'm going to say about that. And those of you who watched my last video from yesterday about Saturn going retrograde and Saturn and Neptune, and their sojourn in 2025 and early 2026, leaving the sign of Pisces, going into Aries, and various trines and squares to Saturn and Neptune, will know that the billowing backdrop was an event. But it is still cooler than yesterday, but still warm in Los Angeles, and an open window helps. It's a nice breeze. Okay, that said, I do not label every one of my videos as important, but there's something I'm going to say at the top of this video that I think needs to be said, particularly in conjunction and for the people who watched this Saturn video I'm referring to that I posted yesterday. And that is as follows. It clarifies both the title of that video. It also talks to a certain aspect of Neptune and Pisces that I've been talking about that I feel needs to be clarified once and for all, because I am very sensitive to this notion of me continuously talking about this kind of crisis in the Pisces part of the chart, the house occupied by the sign of Pisces in your chart. Neptune entered Pisces in 2012. Whatever it created, whether it was for the positive, the pursuit of spiritual and artistic and creative goals, the creation of a sense of spiritual togetherness, connectedness, or whether it created a crisis of the nature of loss or deception or gaslighting, and that crisis accelerated through 2015 and peaked in 2016-17. The thing I want to state is, and I said this before, but I really want to make it clear because I don't want to keep talking. I'm a little concerned that everyone will automatically go into a paranoid space about it. What I can tell you as someone who does readings and collects his data based on interpretation, but also based on the fact that things show up consistently and what their nature is in doing the readings, conducting the readings, and getting feedback, is that different people, if we look at the more challenging aspect of Neptune's transit through Pisces, particularly at the time when we had Chiron there and the South Node eclipses there, I'm talking about when the crisis peaked, 2016-ish, 17-ish, 14, 15, 16, 17, during that time, there are a lot of people who relate to and talk about this kind of gaslighty, deceptive energy, and the fact that that crisis has not resolved itself and not quite died down. Now, what we do know, and what again I see consistently, is with Saturn's entry into Pisces in March 2023, that there is some structure around it, and a lot of that structure is one of revelation, where things are unclear or vague or deliberately vague and unclear. There's now greater clarity. But the larger question is, what are we to get from it, and what is that about? Neptune ultimately is trying to loosen our grip on, as I've mentioned to you before, both Neptune and Pluto, unless they are making a transformation that is meant to go in a certain direction. That's that kind of spiritual, artistic direction I talked about before. What they do when they remove things from our life, or trying to remove things from our life, is that there's this clear-sighted why am I using that term clear-sighted with Neptune? There's this knowing on behalf of the planet with regard to what it is that needs to go, what it is that needs to be eliminated, what it needs, where it is that the grips need to be loosened to some extent. And this sounds cheesy and vengeful, but don't underestimate the role of karma in all of this, our own agency. If someone is doing something where the intentions are not clear, it's rare for me to see someone get away with something in such a way that it's just amazing for them, that they're not somehow challenged with it either. And some element of karmic lessons may also hold true for us. Now, as I've said, it's a different experience as Neptune if Pisces is in your first, second, or third house, and you are being seen as the mysterious agent or the deceptive party or the party who's playing your cards very close to your chest, or if Neptune's going over your 7th and 8th house and others are coming across this way. And the other thing that I want to mention that is so challenging through this transit, but helpful with Saturn there, is this idea that once someone is vague or unclear or gaslighty or deceptive or does not give you the facts or does not answer something to your satisfaction, it colors everything that they do. And this is something about that Neptune transit that has to be mentioned. Not everything that is going on has to have the same intensity or level or even presence of Neptunian fogginess and smoke and mirrors and cloudiness and loss. So some element, once we experience someone dealing with us in a certain way, it becomes very hard to see matters related to that person or those parties or the Pisces part of our chart through a clear, clean, non-foggy, non-Neptunian lens. And that can do a number on everybody involved. Situations can be affected, relationships can be affected. People can become paranoid. People can start accusing each other of becoming paranoid. People can start worrying that the other person is being an aggressor, and that makes the situation more complicated and worse, because then people start to do things to defend things, and just things unravel. Ultimately, the joke that Neptune has on us, and to some extent Pluto has on us too, is this idea of whatever it is that we're holding on to and fighting. I think the question is, know where your source is and know what the things that you're being attached to or the people that you're being attached to that are somehow being removed from the situation. There is with Neptune very much this sense of you come in with nothing and you leave with nothing, as I've said. And so the things that we get so head up about, where are we going to take them? And the things that we feel that are being violated, if we were really to look at it from a Neptunian perspective, Neptune would say, well, who is being violated, really, at the end of the day? But at the same time, we don't also kind of want to walk through life being overly altruistic or feeling like we're being taken advantage of, or that we are not setting boundaries where they need to be. Because ultimately, we are also dependent on resources, and there is such a thing as things being handled as a matter of principle. And what we're trying to address here is Neptunian smoke and mirrors deceptiveness. When I titled my video yesterday, Keep It Real or Make It Real, the Make It Real referred to Saturn's presence in Pisces now, the transit through Pisces from March 2023 to February 2026, with the brief entry of Saturn into the Aries next year in 2025 for about 3 months, which I covered in yesterday's video, so you can watch that. The Make It Real refers to if you have spiritual or artistic goals, then Saturn is going to encourage you to make them real to your highest potential. And if you're dealing with a certain amount of fogginess, Saturn is going to actively encourage you to, yes, set boundaries, deal with consequences, but also learn and separate the wheat from the chaff. And where you were not able to keep things real and where things may have escalated or become confusing or become a source of stress, or as I have said about the sign of Pisces, the house occupied by the sign of Pisces in your chart, an energy leak. This is what made and has made June so complicated with the energies that we've got at play. We have Mars going through Taurus demanding attention there. We had resonances with the eclipses in the first 2 weeks of June. And we had this persistent energy leak as the Sun, the new moon in Gemini, Venus and Mercury squared Saturn, and then Neptune and Pisces. We may have been able to take action in the Gemini portion of our chart in relationship to the issues presented, or we may not have. But somewhere there was this energy leak, this worry, this, is it this, is it that? What is this, is some blah, 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 blah. The question you're left with is, what is real? And how does one keep it real? And what is in our control? And if it is not in control and something is not going to be clear, how far do we take things to set up boundaries appropriately and then let it go? Some people who I have talked to through readings have talked about the fact that they view this kind of Saturnian fogginess almost through a lens of, depending on the situation, as not as something as being deceptive necessarily, but as much as through a lens of kind of universal Piscean love and sharing and a willingness to let certain things go or look at things from a place of sacrifice, or and I think that is a perfectly legitimate way of acknowledging the energy, then processing it in a way that makes sense to you. But even if you do have, for example, Neptune going over the 7th and the 8th house, or the 8th house, 7th or the 8th house if you're Virgo rising or you're Leo rising, then, you know, or if you're dealing with Neptune going over your 11th house, and that would make you what? Give me 1 second. So that would be Pisces, a Taurus rising, for example, and you're dealing with potentially, again, I'm going with the more challenging aspect of this. You're dealing with something kind of foggy in the, you know, in this particular part of the chart. The 11th house for Taurus rising would be friends and networks and social circles, and the 7th and the 8th house would be commitments and partnerships, whether they're with spouses or committed partners or family, or you know, with Neptune, there's just this sense of unraveling that you can't quite put a finger on. You can't, and loss, and you can't. It's very hard to put structure around it. Very hard to solve the leak. But with Saturn there, of course it will happen. And if you have Saturn retrograde in your birth chart, that process is going to, during 2024, you're going to start to deal with and tackle those issues between June the 29th and November the 15th of this year. That goes back to yesterday's video. So rather than, I was just very conscious after yesterday's video that I was just like, I keep talking about, but I don't want people to be in a space of paranoia. I really want to address that keep it real, make it real title that I gave yesterday's video. And I thought it was important enough that I mark this video as important. The rest of this video, we're going to talk about Saturn going through Pisces, but we're specifically going to talk about the Jupiter-Saturn square, which is a big deal. And we'll get to that. But part of what is demanded by Saturn going through Pisces now is resolution. But as I said, and even if Saturn, for you, if you're a Leo, Virgo, or Taurus rising, for example, and Neptune's fogginess is coming at you from other people, you somehow need to, with Saturn's presence there, Saturn is also going to offer you lessons with regard to how you can be a more effective friend or member of a collective or an ensemble if you're a Taurus rising. Now, as I said, in a more positive aspect, if you're trying to do something, friends, networks, social circles, community related that is artistic or spiritual, then that's what Saturn is trying to help you with. It doesn't have to be a foggy, deceptive, gaslighty event. But for those of you who are. For those of you who are dealing with this through partnerships or legalities, if you're Leo and Virgo rising, then it could very well be that some of the lessons that come up for you through Saturn's stabilizing influence, demand for stabilizing the crisis in the Pisces part of the chart created by not only Neptune, but other players, 2014, 15, 16, kind of a perfect storm, and kept alive through successive Mercury retrogrades, and then Jupiter coming in there, and Saturn being there now, and then very soon the North Node eclipses moving in there. Both Saturn and the North Node eclipses will help, I think. I hope that by the end of 2026 into 2027, we can really consider this resolved. And as I said in yesterday's video, my expectation is some form of stabilization, resolution, consequence, however intense and however stressful we might get to by February, March of 2026. yesterday's video. But Saturn will also offer lessons if we're dealing with other parties around how we are, if you, for example, are Leo, Virgo rising, as people to share resources with, or people to be in partnership with, or people to be, because some of the things that are coming up could be as consequences of what it has meant to be in partnership with us. Where have there been breakdowns of communication and understanding so that everything started to become Neptunian and smoke and mirrors-y? And Saturn, of course, as I spent some time explaining yesterday, is going to demand mature and wise and collected, composed actions from us, where we feel very clear about our integrity. And if you're dealing with something like this in the Neptunian part of the chart, I will echo what I said yesterday, which is that when you are in relationship, you have to balance your relationship with your conscience, with the people you're in relationship with, because what you may think may be the right thing to do may not be what they think is the right thing to do. And if you expect to be in relationship with them, then you have to take into account what is important to them on matters that pertain primarily to them. The idea of being right as opposed to being effective is particularly important when we are in relationship with others. As I say, you can be right or you can be effective. You can be right or you can have successful, healthy, supportive relationships. But it's rare, I find, for people who are right and are doing things based on their, I mean, people do the most terrible things to each other and to other people, when, you know, in the name of values and in the name of religion and in the name of what is the right action and in the name of, so when we're in relationship with others, we have to take, especially if it's matters pertaining to them, we have to take their wishes into consideration in order to have a successful relationship, or else people will turn away from us. Now, continuing from here, if all you wanted was the important part of this video that I labeled, then this is where it is. But we're going to now move into Jupiter and Saturn trining each other, squaring each other. Planets moving through the sign of Gemini square planets moving through the sign of Pisces. We have just still recently, we're still under the influence of the new moon in Gemini till July the 5th. So we're still in a Gemini month, the word month being derived from moon. I keep saying certain things that I'm convinced that regular viewers of my video are just like, here he goes again. But I am trying to cater to a wide enough audience. And we've had the Sun, Venus, and Mercury go through Gemini, squaring Saturn and Neptune. With squares, there are two things to keep in mind. Number one, the slower moving planet demands attention and locks for the period while the square is active. The ability of the faster moving planet to continue to act freely. The slower moving planet demands that actions are taken to support it. And there's a lock. It's like two cars at a stop sign at a 90-degree angle. That's what a square is. And the faster moving planet will move, but there's almost kind of a requirement to acknowledge the slower moving planet in some way. And if it's the sun bringing awareness to what the slower moving planet is doing and seeing if that awareness can assist in what the slower moving planet is, if it's Mercury, seeing if some sort of communication, if it's Venus, seeing if some sort of relationship building will help. Now Mars is going to move into Gemini, as we've been discussing, and will square Saturn and Neptune. It's still a little while, it's still a little while away. It's not going to start, that process is not going to start till the end of July. In August, And talking about August, Jupiter, which entered the sign of Gemini on May the 25th of this year and is going to be here till June the 8th of next year, of course is going to go retrograde as it does every year between October and February, October of this year and February of next year. And Jupiter, when it goes retrograde, Jupiter is going to go retrograde between 11 and 21 degrees of Gemini. Saturn is going retrograde in a couple of days between 12 and 19 degrees of Pisces. The one planet that Jupiter will aspect square 3 times. Planets going through Gemini, trine Pluto, trine the South Node, square Saturn, square Neptune. Jupiter's already trined Pluto. Jupiter is getting ready to trine the South Node. And Jupiter will then square Saturn 3 times, trine Neptune finally. And by the time it squares Saturn the 3rd time, and excuse me, I said trine Neptune, squares Neptune. By the time Jupiter squares Neptune, by the time Jupiter squares Saturn for the 3rd time and squares Neptune, Jupiter will already have moved into the sign of Cancer. And those squares will happen next summer of 2025, when briefly Saturn and Neptune move into Aries, only then later on to move back into Pisces to finish up what they need to do by January, February, March of 2026. So Jupiter from Gemini will make 2 squares to Saturn in Gemini, and Jupiter, when it enters the sign of Cancer, will make its final square to Saturn in Aries. And the dates for those are, if you want to know, Jupiter squares Saturn for the first time on 19th of August of this year, the second time on Christmas Eve, the 24th of December of this year, and finally on June the 15th of 2025, when it is in Cancer and Saturn in Aries, and on June the 18th, Jupiter in Cancer will square Neptune. So Jupiter squaring Neptune will not happen in Gemini and Pisces at all. Jupiter, wherever it goes, ends a 12-13-year cycle, starts a 12-13-year cycle, creates an auspicious new beginning, often tied to Jupiter's transit through your 9th house in your chart. I had done a video on Jupiter transiting through Gemini. I'll place a link to it at the end. What I just said will make more sense if you look at that video. I'm not gonna, if I go into that now, we're gonna have another hour-long video, which I would like not this one to not be, since you already sat through one yesterday, or some of you have. By the way, if anyone is more interested in what is going on this week, there's a weekly overview that you can look at. Yesterday's video was on Saturn and all some of the stuff that I'm developing here, and then the video before that was the weekly overview that will get you better situated with where we are at currently. Okay. Jupiter, wherever he goes, aligns, tries to create a lucky break, tries to bring the right opportunities, the right people, the right kind of energy to align you with the last Jupiter going over the 9th house transit, to either align you with the right path, the path that is right for you, or else kind of spiral you up. Develop whatever it is that you've been doing for the last 12, 13 years and move you in an even more specifically right direction for you. And Jupiter creates an ending. That is primarily what Jupiter does when it transits. And by creating an ending, it creates a space for a new beginning. And sometimes the new beginning happens while Jupiter is transiting, sometimes it happens after, because the void has to be filled. So, somewhere Jupiter's, and traditionally Jupiter is considered the lucky planet, and Saturn is considered the unlucky planet. Saturn transits are never easy. It just has to be said. They can be incredibly fruitful, productive. They can set up a strong foundation, especially when Saturn is wrapping up a transit. Saturn can reward in a way that we expect Jupiter to reward. But Jupiter, while it's giving a lucky break, can often create, through the process of ending, an unlucky feeling. I got laid off. I broke up with these friends. I ended this particular cycle. I am dealing with a financial crisis if Jupiter's going over the second house. I have to leave my house or my apartment if Jupiter's going over the 4th house. My job is ending if Jupiter's going over the 6th house, for instance. But it's really creating that right new beginning to move in a desired direction or to level you up. Somewhere Jupiter's expansive energy between August and June, awfully long time, is going to be checked by Saturn. And what it is going to feel like, I'll tell you what it's going to feel like. Sorry, that almost sounded like a threat. I'll tell you what it's going to feel like. Do I have this tarot card here? I do. It's going to feel like this. Astrologically, the Two of Pentacles is Jupiter in Capricorn. Jupiter dealing with Saturnian energy. It's going to feel like you are juggling and having to balance both Jupiter in Gemini and Saturn in Pisces. And Saturn in Pisces is going to demand that it gets just that much more attention. Somewhere the expansiveness promised by Jupiter, trying to be created by Jupiter, and it will be, is going to have to be balanced by the fact that Saturn is going to say, all right, you can create the expansiveness, but don't even think that you can ignore what I am trying to get you to stabilize in the Pisces part of your chart. And it is going to feel like the act and the process of stabilizing the Pisces part of the chart, the house occupied by Pisces in your chart, can threaten to prevent Jupiter from giving you the lucky break or introducing you to the right people or creating the right space for you to experience that new beginning. We are going to have to find that balance of juggling on one foot these two energies. Seriously. Could I not have organized this differently after yesterday? I'm just laughing at myself. The last time Jupiter squared Saturn was 2015-2016, July 2015 to May 2016. Saturn's reality check, which you may or may not have honored, which you may or may not have ignored, put the brakes on Jupiter's expansiveness. Remember, I talked about the crisis feeling in 2015-16, especially peaking in 2016-17, 2016 being the peak year for a lot of people. Now, Jupiter and Saturn were not, Saturn at that time was not in Pisces, nor was Jupiter. But the needing to be serious, needing to be responsible, needing to be, remember the word I used for yesterday's video, real. as you balance Jupiter's expansive energy in the Gemini part of your chart and Saturn's demanding stability, taking the right actions, stopping the energy leaks in the Pisces part of the chart, we're going to feel it in August of this year. As I've been saying to you, May, June, July are forward-moving months. August is a month of pausing and integration and understanding what is working and what is not working and what is the reality around a certain situation that may have been in your blind spot and how you're going to move forward with it and how you're going to integrate it, etc. We're going to have Mercury retrograde in Leo in August, and we will have the first Jupiter-Saturn square on August the 19th. Then they separate. Jupiter's going direct, Saturn is going retrograde. Then in October, Jupiter starts to go retrograde. And by that time, Saturn is direct, and on Christmas Eve, they square again. We'll deal with that in December. And then finally, we deal with the energies again as we head towards June. So we do get reprieves. Jupiter does get to exercise his giving a lucky break, ending new beginnings energy in Gemini during certain parts of the rest of his sojourn through Gemini, during certain pockets, particularly when he's separated 5 degrees or more from Saturn. And frankly, when he's separating, he is more unfettered when it's not an approaching aspect. But there will be times when he will be checked. As if to say, wait a second, you're expanding a little too much there. This is all very optimistic. You are not keeping things real. You're not honoring what I've been saying to you about honoring Saturn's transit through Pisces. In yesterday's video will connect you to this. I have done videos on Saturn transiting through Pisces before, so you can search on YouTube and find them. By the way, if you are watching my videos on Facebook and Twitter, please subscribe to my YouTube channel, because I'm going to stop posting videos on Facebook and Twitter by the end of July. The expansiveness promised by the North Node eclipses in Aries and by Jupiter's transit through Taurus and the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction in Taurus on April the 20th of 2024, earlier this year, 2024. The only thing that it is threatened by, and that expansive energy is rolling out over the next, changes are afoot. The only thing it is threatened by is Saturn in Pisces demanding this. Let's get real about what's going on here. Let's get real about what the consequences are. Let's clarify it. Let's put the boundaries where they need to be, and let's release the BS. It will help to have the North Node eclipses there starting to exercise their influence on July 17th of this year. The first of the eclipses is on September 17th. We'll see an acceleration of energies from the week before and after July the 17th till September 17th. But the Aries North Node eclipses continue to exercise their influence till the end of the first week of June of next year. Partly because the Libra eclipse of release on the Aries-Libra axis occurs on October the 2nd and takes over. And then we have one more solar eclipse in Aries on March 29th of next year. So these videos and conversations that I'm having with you about the Pisces part of the chart starting to exercise, demand greater presence, greater engagement, is for a reason for all these multiple a certain amount of expansiveness, you're not going to be able to keep expanding while ignoring the realities demanded by Saturn in the Pisces part of your chart till the middle of next year. You're not in general, but really you will feel that tension. And we have just gone through part of what has made the first 3 weeks of June challenging, and part of what has created an energy shift this week is the fact that for the first 3 weeks of June, we were dealing with squares to Saturn. And this week we're dealing with the first trine to Saturn, as Mercury has entered and is transiting through Cancer. Rather than dealing with a 10 square, we have a trine. Jupiter will trine Saturn in 2026, when Jupiter is in Leo and Saturn is in Aries. But first we've got some squares to deal with. And there's so many energetic shifts. Well, so many. They're enough, in 25, 26, particularly 2026, when Saturn and Neptune finally change signs from Pisces to Aries and Uranus moves out of Taurus and into Gemini. And from there, this is the topic for tomorrow's video, Uranus will trine Pluto. Exciting. More on that tomorrow. But I do need to give you a heads up and do need you to start preparing and thinking about it. August is not that far away. It is June the 27th as I'm recording this. I'm going to post this on June the 28th. Jupiter in expansiveness continues. As I've said, May, June, July, forward movement. August, pause button. Integration. What's real, what's not real? What's a problem, what's not a problem? What's going to be a problem, what's not going to be a problem? What has actually been going on in something that has felt expansive and forward movement-y, but hasn't had naturally an element of fantasy around it? And what is real about a situation? And what does that mean? Do we continue to invest in it? Do we not? But yeah, an extension of this energy. Sun, Mercury, Venus going through Gemini. The new moon in Gemini. June the 6th to July the 5th, this Gemini month, squaring Saturn. What that has felt like in June. When Mars comes into the picture to square Saturn and Neptune in August, September, and when Jupiter squares Saturn for the first time, these energies will be present with us and will be compounded and we'll feel them. Now, as I said, there are other energies at play too. It's nice now. We're going to have, this is what I covered yesterday with trines to Saturn and remember, I mean, Mars is going to square Saturn. Yeah, Jupiter is going to be squaring Saturn, but Mars is going to trine Saturn and Neptune 3 times when it is retrograde. So we're going to have this balance of support and tension, and support and tension, and flow and blockage, and threat, and cooperation and threat. But this was a major, Jupiter has played a significant role this year with regard to the primary big aspects that are about, that are occurring in 2024. The Jupiter-Uranus conjunction on April the 20th and the Jupiter-Saturn square. Squares. We will continue to track and develop and talk about this, of course. When it comes to the energy of July, we continue to enjoy the trines to Saturn. Mercury yesterday, Venus soon next week. The new moon on July the 5th, trining Saturn. The sun on July the 10th, trining Saturn. Then these planets, Venus is going to trine Neptune on July the 2nd, when just before it enters Leo. Mercury will. And the Venus and the Sun will trine Neptune. The Sun is going to trine Neptune. Part of the reason why I've been talking about, and this goes back to the full moon in Capricorn video I did, the second full moon in Capricorn we had this year, the Sun is going to be trining Neptune. So, as I said, May, walking to the edge of the diving board, having a sense of flow. June, demanding that we jump off and creating that complexity and blockage and stress. July, moving forward, but all May, June, July, forward movement. And we get to enjoy a certain amount of greater ease in July. By the time we get to August, squares are active again. Okay? I am going to start to repeat myself, and I'm not going to. And I can feel with this kind of energy, you know, if you know where Gemini is in your chart and where Pisces is in your chart, and if you know what ending a 12, 13-year cycle in the Gemini part of your chart to help create an auspicious new beginning in the Gemini part of your chart would look like and feel like, and you intuitively feel that energy alive and acting, which you would and should by now. It's not clear, but it is present. Because we have the Sun, Venus, Mercury, Jupiter walk into Gemini, with the Sun, Venus, and Jupiter doing it in the space of 5 days at the end of May. We're still in Gemini, you know, we're still in the month of Gemini. So you may have an intuitive sense of where this is going, and the biggest thing this is telling you is you're not going to just be able to expand in that direction freely. Some of the attention is going to need to be divided, like that Two of Pentacles I showed you between Jupiter and Gemini and Saturn and Pisces. With greater attention being paid to Saturn stabilizing, the more stable the Pisces part of the chart is, and the other question is, this is the important question. This is what we're getting to. The thing to meditate on and think about is, what could these endings and beginnings, the ending of a 12, 13-year cycle, an auspicious new beginning in the Gemini part of your chart, what could that have to do with providing stability in the Pisces part of your chart? What changes could you make in the Gemini part of your chart through the lens of Jupiter, ending a 12, 13-year cycle and creating an auspicious new beginning that is moving you in the right direction, that would assist Saturn in Pisces, creating the sense of clarity and stability there? If Saturn is on a positive level, concretizing plans to move in a more spiritual or artistic direction in the Pisces part of the chart, what does Jupiter and Gemini need to do to support that? What is the synergy between the two? It's not going to feel synergistic in terms of flow, but it is that question does need to be asked also. What is the connection? What is needed for Jupiter and Gemini to do in order to allow Saturn and Pisces to do what it is trying to do? Whether it is stabilizing fogginess or whether it is concretizing artistic or spiritual plans. And if you don't know your chart, then as you head into August, it's a question of where are you experiencing a certain transformation? And I will admit this is a little bit vague. Knowing your chart would be helpful. Where are you experiencing a certain amount of growth and change and shift in the ending of a 12, 13-year cycle, but a certain amount of transformation? And what could that transformation have to do with stabilizing the part of your chart that dealt with this crisis in 2015, 16, 17? And now you have another piece of the puzzle with 2015, 16, which is that even though these planets were not transiting Pisces at that time, you know now what a square between Jupiter and Saturn feels like. The reality of Saturn and Saturnian responsibilities you can't ignore it. Or it will contribute to a crisis. It will create a crisis. If you are interested in me either creating a kind of an easy to read version of your chart so you can follow along my videos, or do a reading for you based on your birth chart, then you can email me. In the description area below is my email address. I can give you information about rates. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel if you haven't already. That'd be awesome. And there's a bell icon next to the subscribe button. Hover over it. There's a wiggly bell on top. Click on it. You'll be notified when I do new videos. There's a thanks button if you want to contribute to the channel. Comment, like, it gives videos more circulation. If you found the video useful and think that it might be useful to someone else, go ahead, feel free to tell them about it. Thank you to everyone who commented and who's commented on my last couple of videos where I was obsessing about this not being right and that not being right, and being kind and encouraging. We're all appearance conscious, you know, in some ways, and we don't need to be. And while that makes rational sense, it's a hard thing. It's a hard place to operate from. So it's really helpful when someone's just like, please don't sweat it. I really appreciate that. I will leave you guys to it and be in touch. Tomorrow we'll talk about yet another. Now, this thing that I'm going to talk about tomorrow is even further away, but I do need to start to highlight it because some of the lunations we're going to start to experience in August. We're going to start to explore what it would actually feel like to experience Uranus trining Pluto, because that trine will briefly and very slightly be within a 5-degree range this year as well. Uranus and Pluto move awfully slowly, so they're not really, that trine is really not going to be active till 2026, but we're going to feel them start to get closer, and then one planet will go retrograde and the other will go retrograde, and they'll start to separate and they'll get closer and closer and closer. Really, for that trine to happen, Uranus needs to enter Gemini and Pluto will be in Aquarius, and then they will trine and create a certain flow. But I'm going to discuss that more tomorrow. Okay, thank you very much. I'll see you guys soon.